Coming up on episode 198 of Creative Writing, I'm talking about creating an author newsletter.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light. These restless thoughts have kept me up again tonight.
Hello and welcome to Creative Writing. This is the podcast for you, an author who wants to sell more books without being smarmy. I'm your host, Kirsten Oliphant, and whether it's your first or 198th time listening to the podcast, I'm really glad that you're here. If you missed last week, I'm starting a new series on author platform and selling more books in 2021, but I'm not saying 2021 in this one. I didn't name it Creating an Author Newsletter in 2021 because I think and hope that the things we're talking about today will last past 2021, because honestly, a lot of them are the same things that have been working for me for a couple years now. So we're going to get into that, and it's one of the reasons I like emails so much. If you have not listened to the podcast much before, you will know that I'm all about ROI, the return on the investment of your time and money, and email is a big one for that. So we're going to get right into it. If you'd like the show notes, you can go to creativewriting.com/198. I'm going to have a lot of links today and other resources. I do pretty meaty show notes, so there's a lot of written stuff there for those of you who either don't like listening, which is not you guys listening, or who want to listen and then actually read as well. So you can head over there and find that. Let's get into email. Let's get right into email. I realized when I was looking, I've talked a lot about email over the past years. I guess I started the podcast 6 years ago, which is crazy. In a couple months, it'll be 6 years. And I've been harping on this email thing since the beginning. But back in the beginning, I didn't have a fiction list. So now I have built nonfiction lists and fiction lists and have seen some of the differences and some of the things that are the same through both of them, which is great because I have that bird's eye view. So we're going to focus a little bit more on author newsletters for fiction in this episode because that's not something I've done before. But I'm going to have links to a lot of the other email podcasts and posts I have done. Like I have some really specific posts on like delivering freebies and things like that people ask a lot of questions on that are more technical. So this one is going to be overall a general idea of author platform. And the reason that we're starting here, we talked about author platform in 2021 and what that looks like in the last week. And email is really still what I would put as the cornerstone of that author platform. And the reason why, which is where what we're going to start doing, why I'm harping on email still sells more books than social media. For the most part, and I would say like most, there are some places where, and some genres where social media can really sell. And I'm talking like Facebook groups or Instagram posts. I'm not talking about ads. Ads are not social media. They might be on social media, but ads are ads. We're talking about organic posting on your Facebook page or in your Facebook group or other Facebook groups or reader Facebook groups or on Instagram or Twitter or those places. Research is still just showing that email sells more. And I know that I have also seen when I send an email or when someone sends an email for me through a newsletter swap versus me posting on Facebook, I've watched those numbers too. So after years, email is still king in terms of selling. It's also, we've seen a lot, especially with the election and political things, we've seen a lot of people seeing accounts go away. We've seen, even if you're not someone who's had an account go away, we've watched some big people have their accounts taken away. And I've also seen a lot of people not related to the political climate, but, get hacked on Facebook and then lose everything, their ads manager, all of their groups, their page, lose control of that completely. And then, some things just fade out altogether. And so social media is a really volatile world where email has really been the same. It's kind of a dinosaur. It's Old Faithful is email. It's a little bit archaic in a way, but that's good because it hasn't changed that much, which means you can count on it a little more. It's also something when you're growing an email list, and let me make this distinction because I haven't yet. I'm not talking about sending a bunch of emails to people through Gmail or Outlook, or if you're using AOL or one of those. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about using MailerLite or MailChimp or ConvertKit to mass email people who have opted in. And I have posts about the legality about that as well and other things. So again, you want to go to the show notes to find more of those posts because we're not diving into that. But that's what I'm talking about with an email list, a newsletter. are those. You really don't want to be sending mass emails from your own inbox personally. But when you do that, when you have people opt in through whatever means, through, I'm using MailerLite for my fiction list. When I have those people opt in, I can actually access a spreadsheet of all of those people who have opted in, and I can take that and move it to another platform. I could go from MailerLite to ConvertKit or from ConvertKit to MailerLite. I could print them out and hold them in my hand, and that's something you cannot do with any social media platform. So if you lose, you lose access or you lose for whatever reason, email, MailChimp shuts down, you can still print out those emails and take them somewhere else. It's not the same as when Facebook or Instagram shuts down and you have no access to those people. So the access is different. It's more permanent. It's something that you own. And that's really important. It's also something where even though we have crowded inboxes, there's just a difference in communicating through email. And when you send an email through MailerLite and you send, it's like a mass email, right? It goes to all those inboxes, but then they hit reply, if they hit reply, and it becomes personal one-to-one. Now that's not for everybody. I've actually had to stop. I used to ask questions in all my emails. The quick fix that comes from this podcast and even in my author emails, I would ask a question and say, hit reply. I'm just on the other side of the reply button. That used to be my closing out thing. And I would have dozens and dozens of replies every week. Well, I can't manage that right now. My life blew up and I don't want to have a PA do it because I feel like the people who hit reply deserve a response from me. And so there is that personal aspect to it. And even when I don't ask for a reply, I still have people every week when I send emails who reply. And then I reply back as much as I can because there's something really special about taking that time to do that. So it's a communication that goes one to many, but also can become one to one. It's very personal. The inbox is a sacred space. And if someone invites you into it, we need to respect that space. So we'll talk about content, but also it's just a really good way to connect with your readers in a more personal way. So it's yours, it's a direct line, and it sells more books than social media. So those are the reasons that I would still say that creating an author newsletter and having this email list is really the cornerstone for your platform, or should be. So let's talk a little bit about growth, and then we'll talk about what to actually send, just touching on that a little bit. So there are a couple distinctions when it comes to growing your email list. I'm going to share what's worked for me this past year. But the big distinctions are whether you're growing organically, like people signing up in the back of a book, or if you're paying, you're not buying subscribers, but you're using paid growth tools. So we'll talk about that. And then there's kind of a middle place of organic-ish where you have some incentive there. But so let's talk about first the organic. So organic growth is when you have like a sign up on your website that just says, sign up for updates. Or if you have a sign up in the back of a book that you've written that people have to buy on Amazon or iBooks or Apple Books, I guess, and Google Play. And then it asks and invites people to sign up for your email list. That's organic. They bought a book and then they decide to opt into your email list. Organic-ish is when you offer them an incentive, but it's still free. Like they've bought the book and they can opt in at the back of the book to get a free chapter, a free bonus, a free book, whatever it is. So that's, I would say, organic-ish. So it's still organic, but you're also offering them that incentive, but it's still free. And then there's paid growth, and that could be Facebook ads, joining paid giveaways, doing paid author promos. And I'm going to have a list of some of the ones I like on there. So those are kind of the options that you have for doing this. And I'm going to talk specifically for a minute about what has worked for me under both of my pen names. There's a lot out there. Some of the wisdom and some of the big people who've talked about growing your email list have talked about offering a free book. That can still work. But I do think we're inundated in 2021 with free. Free books are all over the retailers. Free books, you don't have to even opt in to get many free books, but you can also go to group promos. And I've been in some group promos that had like 40 free full-length novels. People are overwhelmed. So while a free book can be an incentive and can work really well as an email opt-in, I have found shorter has worked really well for me. So with the young adult, I have talked about this some on the podcast as well. When I launched the Sullivan Gray pen name, I created a prequel and I wrote it in a weekend. It was under 20,000 words and it was a full, story arc, but it was a prequel that dealt with the main male character who was going to be involved in the romance in a 3-book series. So that worked well as an introduction, but also when people finished the end of book 1, I said, hey, you can go back and read about Sebastian if you go check this out. So some people, that worked for both discovery. So that's something else to consider. Is this something you're offering to people who are discovering you for the first time? Or is it something that you're offering at the end of a book where they haven't heard of you? So a prequel works really well because it's short. It ties in, or should ideally tie into, the other series. So it leads people right in, and you can have those bio links in the back of the book or in the back of the prequel. And it doesn't take that long. Again, you could write this in a weekend or a few days or however long you want to take. You could take longer too. But because it's shorter, you're able to do less. And I had a lot of signups for that. I was trying to actually go see, but I had so many different places you could sign up. I can't really tell. But I think most of my subscribers for my email list, and I have around 4,000, came from that prequel. So, under 20,000 words, I think it was like 13,000 words. So it doesn't have to be giant or long. So if you're intimidated, like, oh no, I can't write a free book, you don't have to. And I think sometimes that works better. So that is something, a prequel can work for discoverability and at the end of a paid book. But I've also found an opt-in that worked really well, probably my best ever. For my first rom-com, Falling for Your Best Friend's Twin, I had a bonus epilogue and people could opt in. Now, at first I made it required. And then after getting slammed in a review on Amazon, I made the decision to make it optional for opt-in because I decided, I want people to get this. The book is concluded. The criticism that I didn't agree with in their review was that you needed to have that epilogue to finish the book. You don't. The book is by all means complete. It's just getting a further picture out. Whatever. We all make our own decisions. I made the decision to make it an opt-in and not have it in the book. And I stand by that, but I did make it voluntary, and that's fine because I feel like at the end of it, if people want more from me, they can get it. But I don't want a bunch of people who are just going to come and go. And so anyway, that is just a chapter. It's a couple pages, and that has gotten me almost 2,000 subscribers since October. And those are new subscribers, 2,000 new subscribers since October. Now, as a caveat, that book has sold really well. So, it's not like you're going to get 2,000 subscribers if your book is not also selling. So the book sold well, but what that tells me, that number, that's the highest conversion I've ever gotten from a paid book having a freebie in the back. That if you get people hooked on the characters and you're offering them something that continues the story on with the people they've fallen in love with, whether you're giving away, hey, read this chapter from the other person's perspective. Get this person's backstory. Read the story that bridges this story with the next one. And then you're having buy links in the back. Not only are you growing your list, but you're also still able to promote the next paid thing. Now, that wouldn't work very well for discoverability. Like I can't go promote like, hey, get this bonus epilogue, because if you haven't read the book, it doesn't work. So that kind of content only works at the end of a book, where a prequel could work well on its own or at the end of a book, right? So just consider where you're going to have the sign up when you're thinking about the content. My point is, it doesn't have to be long. And if you're spending the time doing an opt-in, it really should be your best writing. It really should have a professional cover, which all of mine have. And it should tie into something paid. It should tie into a series if you want it to be the most effective that it can be. So that's what's really been working for me, is having smaller pieces of content, inviting people to opt in to get these kinds of bonuses. And I like this because it's a lot less pressure than writing a free book, and you're not giving away a free book. And, I found this with nonfiction as well, that after a while, there were so many free books there too, that sometimes getting a checklist, the people would actually open and use it versus getting this free book. I actually had a whole folder of freebies I had downloaded and never opened, like 50 of them from different people whose lists I had joined. So sometimes that free book, it's just overwhelming, and we have so many of those. So for organic-ish growth, organic-ish, Book Funnel, Story Origin, Book Cave work really well. Prolific Works is another one where you can join group like author promos. Usually those work for the full books. But also you can have a download page just to deliver the content. So when I have that sign up for the bonus chapter, the bonus epilogue in the back, it goes through BookFunnel, and then BookFunnel is connected to MailerLite. So BookFunnel helps deliver it so people can actually get it on their e-reader. And it's a lot easier to get it on the e-reader when you have them kind of explaining the steps versus you trying to explain to people the technology of that. So that's really helpful. And they do have, if you're going to do something like BookFunnel or Story Origin, I really like the group promos by genre. They don't work as well for me anymore, but part of that is I'm probably, maybe I've burned out some of those audiences because I've done so many of them. So if you're doing group promos through BookFunnel, the same as when you're doing paid ones, I'm going to talk about some of the paid ones, you don't want to do those too frequently because you're just going to end up getting the same signups, right? So for paid growth, there are options like Authors XP and Book Sweeps, and they host by genre giveaways. So again, or maybe not again, I guess for the first time, make sure when you're doing any of these, free, organic-ish, paid, you want it to be genre specific, okay? You don't want to just do a big, wide, sweeping, huge genre because you may not get the readers you need. So don't just get fiction. You want to go into drill down. Like I've done ones that are like just cowboy books, okay? That just cowboy romance, just Christian cowboy romance. So drilling down into some of these niches can really help you get the actual right subscribers. Fussy Librarian, you can pay to have traffic sent to your BookFunnel page for your freebie. I'm trying to think, there's a couple others. LitRing has some options for giveaways. And I think there's another one. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. I'll put it in the show notes because I'm going to remember it as soon as I stop talking on there. But there's some options that are paid, and I don't think paid is always terrible. Some people will say, oh, you should really only do organic. Those are the best subscribers. But I've also had some really good subscribers and have really good open rates from some of these paid things as well. Fiction Atlas Author Builders. And then I think Enchanted Quill might have some as well. Anyway, there's some other paid options. I've had some good luck with a lot of those, but the organic growth from the back of the book, giving away smaller pieces of content, has really worked the best for me. So that's something to think about as you're trying to grow your email. And sometimes it's slow. I think a combination of all these things is really good, but you don't want to overdo anything. Like you wouldn't want to do 2 book sweeps in a year. You wouldn't want to do 2 Authors XP in a year for the same genre. And I wouldn't spend too much time doing too many of the BookFunnel or those kinds of promos. I think my readers are burned out from them because when I share those in my email list, those are often the lowest clicked on things. Like BookFunnel actually keeps a reputation of how many people you send. And I've got an email list of like 7,000 people. And I will send out links to those and promote them, with an image, with some words about them, really pump it up a couple times and sometimes only send like 100 people there. I think people are a little burned out. So you don't want to do too many of those. But when you're just starting out, that can really be a good way to kickstart that growth. So what are you supposed to actually send to your readers? We're going to touch on this really briefly. And I have people asking all the time questions like, what do I say? Or how often do I send? And I think the question that drives that is really, why am I sending email? And you might have your own specific reasons, and you probably do, but the big overarching why of email should be, I think, the same for all of us. And that big overarching why is not just to sell a book. It's not just to promote your new release or your new series. I know, right? Surprising. No, the goal for your email list is to connect with super fans and build super fans, because they're not just going to buy a book you email them about. They're going to buy all of your books. Okay. So that's what you want to do, right? I talked about that one-to-one connection. You're sending one to many, but you can have those one-to-one. Email is really a great place to be personal. And, a lot of people think that's where you're personal on Instagram or Facebook groups, and you can do that as well. But email is a great place for that. So I typically send an email that's pretty short. It's a couple paragraphs or even a couple, really not even paragraphs. I like a lot of white space. So I do a lot of like one line, hit enter for the white space, another line. Personal stuff, a little funny story, because I'm keeping things light in most of my emails, and humor is just something I do. Sometimes I'm a little more serious and I might share something more serious, but it's always quick. I do a lot of newsletter swaps, and I'll share a link to talking about newsletter swap. So then I share usually a couple recommendations, or I'll talk about my own new release. And so that's kind of it. It's not long. It doesn't take me a ton of time to do these. And I think if you're spending too much time doing these, then I think you could try to consider why. Like, what is taking you so long? Because it doesn't have to be a massive thing. It doesn't have to have a ton of images. It doesn't have to have 10 paragraphs. It probably shouldn't have 10 paragraphs. Although some people will build content, like David Gaughran, and this is nonfiction. He writes a tome and they're great. It's so much good content. So there are people that's what they do. So you need to decide that, but consider it doesn't have to be kind of like with the same thing with free books. We're all inundated in the inbox. You want something quick that they can read that's going to help build those super fans. So what is that going to look like for your particular genre and for you as an author? To share a quick story about this, because not everybody wants to even be personal. Something I learned when I was doing youth ministry is that you really want to have points of connection. So when I was building relationships with and trying to talk to teenagers, which can be just as awkward when you're an adult trying to talk to teenagers as when you are a teenager and you're going into like a party where you don't know anyone, you have to talk to them. I formed points of connection. There were specific things that I really did actually like, but I sort of played them up a little bit more. For example, the X-Files. I loved the X-Files. And I feel like I might have talked about this last week, but I always talked about the fact that the X-Files were coming on at this time. And if we were out doing something with the youth group, I was going to leave and go upstairs or go wherever and watch the X-Files, and they could join me or not. And so I had people buying me X-Files gifts and talking about X-Files and making quotes about it and posters, because that was a point of connection that was really easy. The same thing with the first time I was helping out with junior high. I was actually in high school and I started helping lead a junior high Bible study. And we went on this retreat and I'd never met the girls before. And, they might think I'm cool, but it's not easy to talk to someone, right? You think they're cool because they're older. Okay. I wasn't super cool, but I pulled out an ABBA tape because we were listening to tapes back then because I'm old, y'all. And we played ABBA the entire ride there. They had never heard ABBA because I was not like born when ABBA was big, or I wasn't, I was born maybe, but they weren't big when I was listening to tapes myself. And so I was like, this is the best tape ever. And by the time we got there, everybody knew all the words to the ABBA songs, and we spent the whole weekend singing them. Is ABBA my absolute favorite band? No. Was it then? No. Was it super fun and ridiculous? Yes. And it was a point of connection. Coffee is a point of connection for me. I drink coffee all the time. Alligators are a point of connection. I talk about that in a lot of my super fans, and many of you guys are smiling and you know this. Find those points of connection, and those are things that you can connect with and bond with your readers over. And they're also things you feel comfortable sharing. So many people don't feel comfortable sharing pictures of kids, pictures of pets, pictures of themselves. That's fine. You don't have to do that. Find points of connection. Make them authentic. Like, don't decide, I have a thing for cool socks, if you really don't. But if you do, cool socks are a thing. And who knows, you might actually start getting cool socks in the mail from your fans. So find those points of connection, make it personal so that you're not just another author in their inbox. They remember you because you're the author who likes cool socks. You're the author who has been bitten by an alligator. True story. You are the author who likes the X-Files. Pick those points of connections and then make those connections, because again, it's not about selling one book. It's about connecting with your super fans. Couple final words about author newsletters. This is a very, there's some specifics in this episode, but this is a big overall look at email, because again, I'm doing some big overall looks at selling books in 2021. And I think that a lot of this is really evergreen as well. We often have a hard time with email, but we need to realize that email is really writing, right? And we're writers. And so consider what your email is going to look like each week. If it helps to sit down and say, okay, I email once a week, so that's 52 emails a week or a year. What can I write 52 things on, and giving each one a subject? If you don't like writing, I can always find something interesting about my day. My life is crazy. There's always something. But if you're feeling like you're stuck, then sit down, 52 topics, okay? Put them in there. It doesn't have to be long. Consider that. We're writers, okay? Consider email just another part of writing if it's a roadblock for you. Realize that it is important, and If you're tired of email, I've heard some other authors saying it's not working as well. I don't think mine is working as well. But you know what? It's still working better than when I post on my Facebook page or post on Instagram. It's still selling more books than any social media. I don't even use Twitter anymore. So it is important to have one, even if you're not sending as frequently, even if it's not your favorite thing. It needs to be a part of your platform, period. And I think it's still the most important part, even if you're not sending as frequently, even if it's not your favorite thing. But try to reframe that whole conversation around it. It's just another place to write, and it's just a place where you can connect with your super fans and be as personal as you want. And if you don't want to be that personal, find some things you don't mind having personality. Okay, if you don't want to be personal, think of personality and how you can show personality and not give away too much of yourself that you're not comfortable with. Okay, so we've seen upheaval in a lot of platforms this year and over the years. I've been talking for 6 years. Email is still king. The end. Okay. If you want the list of links to other things like how to deliver freebies, how to be legal with your email list, and what service providers I recommend, you can go to creativewriting.com/198 to see the show notes for this episode. And if you want to get things delivered to your inbox from me every week with author news, tips, and tools, you can go to creativewriting.com/quickfix, where I will send out a quick, like the name, email every Friday with those links. The community, though, is really where it's at. And if you want to connect with other authors as well as me in a personal way on social media, you can go to creativewriting.com/community. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm really glad to be here after 6 years. Even though the podcast has changed so much, it's fun to be here and know that you guys are listening. Thanks also to Jasmine Commerce of jasminecommercemusic.com for the wonderful, amazing music for the show that we have used for so long. That just always makes me happy and always makes me think of the show. I'll never hear it without thinking of it. I hope you're the same way. I'm glad that you're here, and now it's time for you to go out and create content that you love and serve your people well.